Welcome back to Morning Shot. In a break of routine, we are doing a three-parter series this week where we look at the demise and the collapse of South Africa. Today, we are going to look at the policing sector, and then tomorrow, we are going to look at infrastructure. Do keep in contact with the series. It will show you why you should be happy about these developments. Don't just consider these to be a negative. There are three parts of it. So, starting with the first part, Ramon is joining me today from Gangsters Paradise.
Yes, hello everyone. Good to be here. Thank you, Byron. The police are facing a crisis. I think it's the 30th crisis in 30 years, so nothing really new, but you just feel like decay generally, especially in South Africa. It starts off small, and then the cascading effects just increase and increase and increase. And this is what's happening to South Africa at the moment. So in terms of the police crisis, well, first of all, the biggest crisis is that Bheki Cele is the minister. The twat in the hat is a nursery school teacher at best. What he is saying, there's no money for resources, no money for skill development, no money for policemen. That's it. There's no money. That's the only excuse they can actually give.
So they're saying that because of COVID-19, the cost cutting that has had to follow because of that post the scandemic, that basically there's now a deficit in terms of revenue and economic growth. Yeah, we know that. But how is that having an impact then on SAPS? Because we obviously gave away a shed load of money during COVID and we lost a load of money because of corruption. SAPS are now got to take a period of budgetary cuts. I mean, I say budgetary cuts very loose cheek because, as we know, VIP budget seems to go up, even though the actual public policing budget goes down. So they're saying that the impact of this is that basically it's difficult for them to recruit on the ground police officers who are going through and actually doing the day-to-day policing. And where this has the biggest impact to SAPS as a whole is on weekend service delivery and also around any kind of future possible recruiting which they have. So why is the potential recruiting a problem? Well, because there's a number of police officers who are, lo and behold, resigning because they're getting to the end of their tenure. So actually getting the younger recruits into SAPS now because of their budget constraints and because of the salaries that they're offering, they're saying it's really difficult.
I mean, interestingly, they say that the workforce of the police has been reduced significantly. There is close to 140,000 police officers for the entire population of South Africa. There was 150,000 a few years ago, but they're unable to actually keep up in terms of recruiting new police officers because old police officers are retiring and many people resign or be fired or things like that. What is interesting to me is like they're not even at all acknowledging why people are leaving the police force in such droves. What is it about being a policeman that's so shit? So they're only focusing on recruitment but not looking at why people are leaving in the first place. And I assume we know why people are leaving, Byron, because it's a shit job. Let's be really honest with ourselves. It's a shit job. You get 1 day a year to fire your pistol at a shooting range. You get one magazine of 15 rounds. You don't have anything to curb load shedding. You don't have any support whatsoever. It's corrupt as all hell. And even if you want to be a good cop, it's almost impossible to do so because the system is so inherently corrupt and incompetent and useless. So when they say they have no money to recruit people, they're not looking at all at why people are leaving in the first place, which are very, very obvious, but completely beyond the capability of Bheki Cele to fix.
So we covered this during the budget, if you recall, that they said they were going to recruit all these new police officers. They were actually going to increase the number of new recruits. And we mentioned even during that, well, that doesn't take into account the number that are leaving and the number that are retiring and the numbers that just quit. At the end of the day, this article does actually make reference to the net gain actually only being about 4,000 bodies should everything go well, which, let's face it, this is South Africa. So what's the prospect of things going well? And actually we get a net gain. Yeah, I don't see that happening, to be honest. It's also very interesting that one of the things that they are not talking about is the disparity between admin staff and the number of police officers that are actually on the beat. Now, this is something Ian Cameron frequently draws reference to, the fact that there isn't enough, should we call them beat cops, or even detectives that are going out there and investigating crimes. In many instances, that beat cop that just got into the police force is promoted to a detective and he screws up the investigation. What we can see, the net result of all of this is that we have a declining police force. It's a police force that, to be frank, is just not fit for purpose. You may recall a couple of years ago, a former police minister actually said just that, didn't he? He said SAPS was unable to fulfill its constitutional mandate.
Indeed, that was back in 2018, and that was the former police commissioner who also was fired for corruption or some other reason. But it's not all bad news. And for the good news, we'll be back right after this message. I'm sure most of you know that South Africa is not a normal place. I mean, the July riots of a year ago is very indicative of that. So if South Africa is not normal, why are you settling for normal tactical gear? Which is why we at Morning Shot refuse to use normal tactical gear. We use Takma. Takma creates the best versatile battle-hardened tactical tactical gear in the entire country. Gear which is versatile, reliable, and ready to serve in any environment. From medical pouches to magazine holders, Sakmach has the best tactical gear for your next hunting adventure, expedition, or even your riot prevention exercise. And for viewers of Morning Shot, you get a special discount through our link, which is in the description below. And now that we are back, Byron, a lot of people might be watching this video and thinking to themselves, geez, the police are terrible. What's the point of being optimistic about that? I am extremely optimistic about this because to me, the police are one of the biggest mafias in this country. There's been report after report after report. In the Western Cape, the mafia has infiltrated the police. There have been reports of the police themselves being responsible for cash in transit heists, for loaning their weapons to criminals, for being integrated with criminals. I myself was a victim of an armed robbery where the two people were active police officers. To me, the police are actually one of the biggest mafias this country has ever seen. And because of ANC incompetence and because of the lack of budgeting, the largest mafia is, well, not worth saving anymore, really. So we must just get the alternatives in and actually do solve proper crime. And if you combine this with the Private Prosecution Office of AfriForum, you combine this with a lot of the private investigators that are around, a lot of the neighborhood watchers that are around, all these people are creating order in places where that order has evaporated thanks to the ANC incompetence. So I think the police should lose more members more quickly, and it's actually very good news that the SAPS is no longer fit for purpose because arguably South Africa will be safer without them.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to remind himself of something, and that is that police states around the world are increasing. You may not look at it as 1984 and go, oh, okay, look, it's exactly like we would expect in a totalitarian government. Let's use the UK, for example. The police are frequently criticized for making laws up every single day. And what they do is they end up enforcing things like hate laws. We saw saying in York, one police force issued a roadside advertisement saying it's an offense to be offensive. Well, no, it's not. So why is it that those things can occur? And that is because the police have been granted too much power. They're being granted too much authority. So what happens when a state goes proper totalitarian on you? Well, the answer is they just get a bit too big for their boots and they come down to you and they put their knee on your neck. What's the best way to be free? Well, get rid of the repressors of the state, the police. So what does that mean for us? I can't really see SAPS taking away our guns anytime too soon because SAPS can't fulfill the mandate of actually protecting us from the bad guys. I also can't see SAPS coming and knocking on your door for hate speech laws because who's going to rock up? They probably don't have a van. And at the end of the day, I can't really see SAPS enrolling a surveillance state on us because, mate, these guys can barely afford petrol for the car. I mean, we know of police stations where they can't even afford the 10 rounds mandatory shooting a year. AfriForum is now donating bullets to police forces so that they can go do their practice shooting. It's kind of a joke. In that chaos and in that joke, there's something to be very thankful for. And that is, we don't live in a country that can go tyrannical. It's impossible for this country to go tyrannical because there's no mechanisms for the government to enforce tyranny.
Yeah, I cannot agree more, except of course in the Western Cape. And since we are DA Shields, Byron, I think it's important. There is one police force, which is not part of the police force, but there is one aspect of the police that works quite well. And that is in the Western Cape, the DA has launched the Highway Patrol, which is something really special. So they have all sorts of like 300 vehicles, drones all over the place. They've got, as far as I understand, quite a lot of equipment, looking at people's license plate on the go, looking at drug deals on the go, and having a sort of quick reaction force to stop all those things from happening. So it looks like Cape Town understands how to run a police force. The national government certainly does not. So at the end of the day, since we are, of course, DA Shields, police does work in Cape Town. So maybe I'm not going to emigrate anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I consider it to be a positive when we go, everything works in Cape Town. We asked this question of ourselves once before, and that is if this government was run by the DA, even though they run things very well and they run things in a proper coordinated fashion, if the government was run by the DA during COVID, would we have a South Africa or would we have had an New Zealand under Jacinda Ardern? And I think we both know the answer to that. So
yeah. So anyway, that's part 1 of the Collapse of South Africa series. Part 2 is tomorrow. We'll see you there. Cheers.